I saw this and I just had to put this on because it really typifies the way the system works. A claim not contested stands true. Silence is consent. A claim brought in law that is not contested or rebutted then stands true, hence silence is considered consent. Do you know that the fundamental reason that people get summary judgments against them is they fail to submit through the procedure of the court any form of rebuttal? I know the system is unjust. I know the claims that are unfounded. But if you don't use their procedures and stand there and believe that it is unfounded, you've just given them a free kick. If you want to see the system change, make them work for a living, finally. Make them work. Make them work to show how they justify what they're doing. Don't make it easy for them. And certainly don't allow people to promote systems that make it easy for the system. If you want to make it easy in a magistrate's court or a district court anywhere in the world, it is to ignore this canon. So if one comes to a civil claim against you, you have two choices. Because when you go to that hearing, if the facts claimed by the claimant are not rebutted, then a summary judgment will be rendered, sometimes in 5-10 minutes. You either have a counterclaim or you rebut those claims in their forms. If it is a counterclaim, very important. A counterclaim, and I know this is not directly here, but a very important issue, counterclaim. A counterclaim never references their claim. A counterclaim merely presents the facts that may be used in another claim in a contrary manner. In other words, it is using the same events but presenting them differently. And by virtue of that, the judge is forced to make a decision between two claims. If you reference their claim even once in a counterclaim, then procedurally that claim is thrown out. It's a trick. It's a trick that they've used over and over. So, and warning, disinfo agents. And I say this because I hear this told all the time. Again, there are people who actually, believe it or not, actually are out there promoting incompetence. You don't need to learn the law. Just follow my 5 easy step process to going to jail. It's easy. If you hear people say you don't have to justify, you don't have to defend, just ignore it, please interrogate that and be very careful about that. If you want the system to change, make them work for it. Don't make it an easy mark. Another canon, authority is hierarchical. The law is hierarchical. It's not surprising that the first culture, the centre of our culture, is religion. It actually is one of the first key bedrocks that separate us from pre-civilised cultures to civilised cultures, is to recognise that we are more than what this is. And that in essence, for want of a better word, is religion. So it's unsurprising that divine law is the highest form of canon law. The laws that are allegedly transmitted from some other realm, or sometimes found on gold tablets or stone tablets, but divine law that speaks of a higher purpose, a higher being, a higher way of living. So it's the highest law, followed by natural law. When we mean natural law, we mean the laws of physics, the laws of science, that we are flesh vessels, that I will die, you will die, we will all die eventually. These are natural laws. Interestingly, in the last 100 years, you find our brilliant bar people, our brilliant lawyers, trying to wiggle a few of these positive laws into natural laws. Have you heard natural person? Well, that's a complete and utter aberration. An absolute perversion. What they're trying to do is say that person, a fiction, is part of the natural kingdom of laws. I mean, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And positive law, of course, here is then the base. And when we're in positive law, admiralty law, maritime law, administrative law, contract, international, are all forms of positive law at the lowest form of law. Yeah? So do you see, not only is canon the highest form of law, but there's a structure to canon law as well. Making sense? Okay. Here's another canon. All property is a right belonging to a trust. It's one of the hardest transitions in imaging to go from the realization that you don't own the physicality of that car. You own a right to use the car, but you can't own it in the sense that you see it as a physical connection to you. I know there are some kids around Sydney would vehemently disagree with me that they are physically attached to their cars. But an example here is a house. You can't wrap your arms around your whole house. You can't hold it. And a rule of ownership, a rule of possession is if you can't possess it, you can't hold it, then ultimately you can't really own it in that sense. You can own the fiction of the house, the fiction on a piece of paper, the right of use, a title or whatever it is. But you can't own the physical. Because we're talking about fictions here, one of the great achievements of the disinfo age of the last 30 years is to put up a giant beware of the dog sign whenever we venture into the world of fiction. Fiction's bad. Fiction's the problem. No, the world is a fiction. Remember Life is a Dream? We have nothing to fear about fiction. Nothing to fear, except fear of itself and ignorance of how they use that against us. There's nothing intrinsically evil about this concept of the trust. It's only when we don't know how it works and we don't know how they've used it against us. Does that make sense? So in our daily lives, we deal with hundreds of trusts associated with property, whether we realise it or not. And we create them dozens of times during the day. Dad